think we're live.
Amazing.
We are live. Just check the audio is coming through. Okay.
Can't see it on YouTube yet.
Yes, it's just come through. It's just come through on YouTube. Fantastic. Make sure that sounds off. Guys, I think we are live. If you're over on YouTube, guys, let us know in the comments that you can see us and hear us all okay. We will be starting very shortly.
Hello, everyone.
Go on. Lara's with me today for hopefully most of the live,
Hopefully.
I suspect. So we're just going to go through. We've got a couple of comments from you guys, which we're going to be going through today. And I just wanted to start out today's live session just with a thank you again. I know we touched on this on Monday's live where we talked about the back extension machine. But just a thank you to all of you guys that participated in the Black Friday sale, events, and everything. That's been awesome. And yeah, guys, we just look like we're looking forward to pushing on with you guys over this next year, and with lots of exciting changes coming. We've mentioned a couple of times now already. We've got the live workout logs that are being worked on right now, and just want to be able to share that with you guys as soon as possible. So definitely something to look out for. Questions that we've got going through, guys. We've got Julia. I'm going to be talking a little bit about IDD, adding IDD into your treatment. Adding IDD treatment into your rehab and how to do this in a strategic manner. And just a couple of things to think about, ways in which we've evolved in terms of our usage of it over the years, and how we think that it tends to work best, considering all things considered. We've got a little bit about the hip hinging, a common error that is made when people are doing the hip hinging. It's an error that creeps into the squats as well, from Anthony. We've got a very good topic, which I think will be very relevant to a lot of you guys, talking about creatine specifically, with regards to Gillian's comment, and that was some chat that was going on in the Facebook group, so that should be good. And then we've got a little bit about home gym setups and leaning forwards on the squat. So this, guys, should be really helpful for all of you guys. And again, if you've got any questions, any comments, please do post them in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, guys, there are an awful lot of, well, not an awful lot, there's a little bit more of a delay, a significant delay on the YouTube, rather than, well, compared to what we'd like. TikTok is a little bit faster. So guys, we will get into it. And I think I'll just have a quick look. Paul's posted a comment in here just to kick things off. He's stuck between phase 2 and phase 3 right now, quite sore, not quite sure how my workout should be structured throughout the week. Right now, Paul, if you're transitioning over into phase 3 and we are doing our phase 3 workouts without any aggravation in any meaningful way, then we should really be looking at working out a good couple times a week. So we're looking at normally 5 times a week with 1 or 2 rest days factored in there. But this is very much dependent on you as an individual, right? If you're feeling you're getting elements of DOMS or elements of post-exercise soreness in the actual workout itself or post-workout, then you might need to factor that in a little bit. Most of the time, as people get into the phase 3 level, they are going to start to get some degree of DOMS, and therefore we need to understand what are we doing here. And this kind of feeds into the creatine question a little bit later on. What are we trying to achieve from our workouts? We're trying to get the stimulation necessary to get change within the body. And so recovery is as important as the actual workout itself. And so it's a case of, Paul, typically speaking, we'd be looking at having a couple of rest days in the week. But again, letting us know how you're feeling after those workouts. Are we getting any stiffness, any soreness in the hamstrings from the hip hinges, for example? Being an individual, or those of you guys that have that background in working out, you've got a bit of an understanding for this kind of stuff specifically. With regards to the workouts themselves, Paul said, should I be alternating between the squat and hip hinge day? Yes. And guys, if you're ever in doubt, always make sure that you revisit the strategy material. There's a lot there. And I know that it's not always going to go in first time. But revisiting, okay, well, how do I do the live workouts? How should I strategically approach these live workouts is important. Now, one of the things I've been saying to a lot of you guys is think about the loading, how the loading compares to your sitting values. And what I mean by that is when we sit, we put 40 to 90% more load through the lumbar spine. And so if we are doing that, we need to be mindful of what that kind of figure is. And so if we're, for example, I use my numbers because they're off the top of my head all the time and I don't need to do the maths, but that's going to be somewhere between 20 kilos and 45 kilos of extra loading in the sitting position. So if we are on our squats and hip hinges significantly below that, or at the lower end of that range, then really we want to be focusing more on the squat and the hip hinge workouts and alternating those. There is the more asymmetry work in the split squat workout for phase 3 and 4, But I'm finding quite often for a lot of you guys coming through the program, that is best reserved for a little bit later on. You're still getting some asymmetry work done by way of your step-ups and by way of your single leg hip hinges, and that's hard technical work. And so that's where you want to get that benefit. Leave out for the time being the split squat workout, Paul, for you specifically. But as we start to progress the load and make success there, we can then make changes. Yeah, Paul said he's only on 20 kilos. And again, we're looking for that 20 kilos to be aggravation-free. And so, yes, that's the way to go for you specifically, Paul. Chris says, Lara seems camera shy. We just haven't got the setup just yet for that. But
well, I was actually, before when we used to do live stream, we had two shots. We had Lara's angle, Mike's angle, but in fact, I think it actually kind of takes away from the questions and from you guys, because it's a little bit disruptive. It's a little bit.
I think it's something we'll work on in the future.
Yeah, I think we will work on that and make it better compared to how it used to be when I was in the shop. But no, definitely not camera shy. And hopefully at some point we will get me back into doing some of the workouts live for you guys as well, redoing some of those, which will be really, really fun. Okay, right. Should we do Julia's question? Unless anything else has come through.
Let me have a look, Oscar. Any advice on exercise I should do with my middle back pain? I'm assuming Oscar's talking specifically about. So Oscar had an issue where I think you put the towel either too large or too high, and he's jarred the area of the middle back. So I would call this really. It looks more like when he uploaded the picture. It's more about the TL junction, which is the junction between the green and the orange here, guys. So the thoracolumbar junction. Just one thing I've noticed in clinical practice over the years, it's very common to get elements of dysfunction at the TL junction when we have an L5-S1 issue, because those joints, the joint surfaces are in the same plane of the facet joints, for example, and they have similar sort of functions. So when one's not working, you often get an element of dysfunction in the other area, which is why you might find your chiropractor or your osteopath, when you go and see them, they might be like, okay, well, we've got an L5-S1 issue. Well, we'll go and do some mobilization work up at TL junction to help. Now, that's not specifically what Oscar's issue is. It's not a secondary thing. It's that he's irritated that segment. The primary thing here is try and keep the joint in a stable position. He's mentioned he feels like he's, I feel like I'm getting better, which is great. Things heal slowly. Just, guys, remember, my eye is still healing, right? The thing is, in our bodies, when we have injuries in our bodies, we don't really it's out of sight. So we forget that from time to time. Healing does take time. It's not magic. And in a significant way, Oscar used a great example. Right now, it's not painful when he's doing a workout, but if he gets in certain positions, it becomes painful. I'm not in pain on a moment-to-moment basis, but if I pick the scab here, it hurts. And that's important to understand. We will go through that element of transition in the healing process of all manner of injuries, back pain included. And so, Oscar, the main focus here is, on your hip hinges, on your squats, making sure you've got a nice neutral spine. If we were doing anything like some ab rotations or any other torsional work, I'd probably just back off that for the moment, but you could potentially start to add that in a very much a testing manner in alignment with some of the principles that we talk about in TREAT. Test, rest, evaluate, adjust, give it some time, and then test again, as we cover in some of the phase 3 material, phase 3 or phase 4 material. So that's really, I wouldn't change too much, Oscar. It's getting better. It's going to take some time, but try and avoid unnecessary provocation of the movement, other than a periodic testing to see, hey, how's it feeling when I do this now? Oh, it's a little bit better, or oh, it's still aggravating a little bit. It sounds like it's on the mend.
Yeah. Awesome.
What was that one there?
Good work there, Oscar. Do you want to do that one?
Yeah, Winston said, just found your channel. I've been having back pains and it hits down my leg and foot. Hopefully I can use your materials to improve back situation. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Check out the various videos on the channel. Check out the website as well for more information. But this is what we do.
And then if you have any follow-up questions to that question, then just
post them
throw
down.
them in here.
Post them down.
Okay.
Should we go with Julia?
Yeah, Julia. Okay, so this question about IDD. I am quite persuaded to try it. In the video, you mentioned that it is beneficial to do some strengthening work before doing IDD therapy. I'm currently on phase 3. Hopefully, we'll start phase 4 soon, so good work there. Just wanted to clarify, would it be okay to incorporate the therapy now?
Yeah, so what you'll often find is if you go to like a standard, just an IDD therapy clinic, they might often, and like many osteopaths, chiropractors, physios, maybe less so physios, they'll often say, well, we'll do some treatment and then you can do some rehab afterwards. And that's what we would have said. I mean, we would, admittedly, even back in the clinic days in London, we would have, before we had the program, we would have still said, you need to start some of these essential exercises at the same time. But some clinicians will say, well, don't do too much, we'll do rehab later. And I think that doesn't work. And the reason for that is because you're doing stuff every single day. Now, the clinician, the reason that those kind of recommendations are so often mentioned is because the clinician doesn't want you to go home and mess it up, right? They don't want you to go home. They told you to do squats, right? They said, okay, you can go and do some careful squats, and you're doing this, right? That happens. And they don't have the facilities to provide a full, robust rehabilitation, structure, guidance, etc. And even, by the way, when we do in the program, we know and factor in that people get it wrong. So they're just worried about you going home and messing things up. Understandably so, because they know that you're coming there with it, you're going to pay money to go and see them, and they want to make sure they're doing the best, but it comes from the right place, I think, but it's not properly thought out. Because the simple fact of the matter is you're going to walk out of that clinic. Let's suppose you're struggling a lot with your sciatica, your back pain, you're worried, you're nervous, etc. You go and see them and say, we're going to do some IDD or spinal decompression. Why are we doing this? To unload the spine. That's why we get given the towel decompression, the bed decompression, those other strategies, right, at home to do, to complement the recovery process. And so IDD is taking pressure off these injured and herniated discs. But you're going to finish the session after your first session, and you're going to go, oh, thank you very much, and then you're going to go out, and you're going to go back, get back in the car, you're going to round your back, you're going to sit down there, drive home, and then you're going to get out of the car and do all of that stuff. So the rationale is you may as well start, and this is certainly the way in which our understanding has evolved over the years, you should start doing the rehab before you even get there. Because what's going to happen is the travel to get to the IDD clinic is going to involve sitting, putting 40 to 90% more load through your lumbar spine. You're then going to get out of the car badly, then have a treatment. So you're setting the treatment up for, making it harder than it needs to be. Not to mention the fact that you've probably been struggling with back pain for a longer period of time, so you've got more chronic factors in play as well. So they haven't got, it works, but you often get the most challenging patients in those sorts of scenarios because people don't defer to go straight to IDD the first time they injure their back. Sorry for nearly punching you in the head.
That's okay.
But
you're fine.
The point is, so it's very helpful to build stability first. So then you go to the clinic and you're already in a better position. You've already got a greater understanding of a neutral spine and how to move and how to protect yourself. There's that element of education and understanding that is there before you even start spending money on the treatment. The way I, what's that? Was that one from Chris?
It's a very interesting comment there from Chris, which is a shame. I can attest that after 18 IDD sessions, I got no real noticeable benefit because I was told no exercise for the first month of treatment, despite asking to start strength work. Frustrated. Yes,
yeah. So this is unfortunately the case.
It's typical, isn't it?
It's very, very typical. And so, and while we do get, because we're in that network, well, not a bit in, we're in that network, the IDD network, we do get IDD clinics that will refer members to the program. You do still get certain places where this will be the approach. And unfortunately, Chris is left with no guidance or support outside of the clinical environment, and unfortunately won't be optimizing the benefit from the treatment. So when we go back to Julia's question, Julia's comment about she's in phase 3, she's phase 3 and phase 4. I think she's using weights somewhere in the teens, if I'm not mistaken, it might be. But as she goes through phase 3 and phase 4, she can strategically leverage the IDD session. Now, when we do the treatment, we do the vibration gun work, we do the laser, we do the decompression all in one session, right? And a lot of clinics will do that. They might do decompression alongside other things to work on the muscles, etc. So you can leverage that session in a number of different ways. And you could just use it as a broad brush maintenance type thing that you go there. People won't bat an eyelid about going and having a regular massage. Well, decompression is just a focus to this area, the area that you're trying to rehabilitate. And so every single day and week, you are putting load through these tissues, having an opportunity to, in a more clinical manner, go and unload the spine with the local clinic on some frequency of event, with some element of frequency, I would argue can help aid you in that recovery process, just like the massage can be better than doing it at home. Should you do it at home? Yes. Can this be helpful for those of you that have the time and the finances required to add this into your process? Yes, of course. But it needs to be used strategically. So I certainly would not be doing the decompression and then going and doing a hard workout. However, I would be considering that I'm always going to have my hard, heavy workouts on a Thursday afternoon because that fits my schedule. And then I'll make it so that on a Friday at some point, or maybe later on in that Thursday after my workouts, I go to the clinic and I have a decompression session and a once over. That can be a strategic use. If you've just got back off a holiday where you've been doing a lot more, you're planning to go away and then you're going to come back, and there's been circumstantial things that have put conceivably more strain through the lower back, even though it might not have necessarily aggravated you in any meaningful way, it might be strategic to just go and have a little once over. right? These kind of things and strategic deployment, incorporation of the IDD, I think can be significantly more impactful than just broad brush going a couple times a week. I think that is maybe a little bit outdated, to be honest. If you've got the facility to have the support outside the clinic. And I would argue that no matter what treatment it is, whether it's something like IDD, whether it's something like a massage, a once over from your chiro, your physio, whoever, right? No matter who it is, as long as it's deployed strategically and with purpose and built on top of a foundation of both education and rehabilitative exercises, it's going to do well. But when we expect to be able to just have a treatment or just have an injection or just have someone do something to us for half an hour or 45 minutes, is it reasonable to expect that that's going to offset the other 168 hours each week that we are doing our own stuff? So that's kind of the strategy. I would say, Julia, go down, have a chat, be honest with the expectations. Like, hey, look, I'd like to try this to see if I can incorporate it into my recovery process. I'm making good progress on the rehab, and I'm thinking about having it sometime after I do my harder sessions, which happen to be on that Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think the clinic will be quite happy to go along with that.
Yeah, I think they would be thrilled actually to have a patient like that who's really taking
you're a good
ownership.
patient.
Yeah, you're a good patient. You're taking ownership, you're strengthening, and then they know that the IDD should complement what you're doing at home. So, and that's having been doing this for many, many years, we've kind of come full circle, really. And we know that the foundation is your strength training, making sure that your body is strong enough to handle your day-to-day activities. And then on that, you can add, like Mike says, massage, IDD therapy, laser therapy, and all sorts.
I think just on that topic, there's a question. So two things. We've got Oscar over there, and then we've got commented here by Life's What You Make It. What vitamins can help strengthen the spine? And I think too often we're looking for something to help strengthen the spine. How does the spine get strengthened? The cells in your spine, in the discs, in the bones, in the ligaments, in the tendons, in the muscles, respond to strain. And they will then lay down more tissue in response to elements of strain. If you're not providing the strain, meaning if you're not doing the work, that's not walking, that's not this, that's doing the rehabilitation work, then you're not giving the input for whatever you're eating to actually be used, right? And so, firstly, supplements and vitamins, etc., you don't need those. You need to eat a good diet, healthy diet, from real food, and have a look at your protein intake, because that's what the stuff that you're trying to build is made out of. But there has to be that workout. If the workout's not there, if the stimulation's not there, the body doesn't know what it's doing. And all too often people are like, oh, can I take a supplement for my back pain? Maybe if you've got all of the other foundations in place, you can add something else which might make a conceivable benefit. But you need to be very careful, because people are always looking for that quicker thing that they can do without having the free stuff, by the way, the stuff that's at no added cost in place.
Yeah. So think about whole foods, think about your diet, think about your protein intake, think about good healthy fats.
Just your food should have a name.
Just to kind of say, one of the things that we do like taking, that we do tend to kind of recommend, is the collagen, the collagen supplement. So if you want any more info on that, let us know. Can we just do Gillian's comment then?
Julia.
Gillian here. Just because it leads into supplementation.
Well, let me just go back to Julia, because Julia's on the YouTube here. She said, how long after the IDD can you do the strengthening? I would just do it the next day. So if you had your hard workout on Thursday, you did a decompression session on Friday, sometime around the middle of the day, I wouldn't rush to go back to that next hard session, because by this point, Julia, as she says, I'm doing around 3 sessions a week. So I would space it nicely, but I'd have your hard session and then your decompression that next day, or the same day, but afterwards. And then naturally, you're going to have another good session in a couple of days' time. So it's going to work quite nicely. We can incorporate things like low load days. So for example, say you're squatting normally 50 kilos, you're going to have a day where you do like a 25 kilo squat day. And that's just nice and light, helping recovery from the muscles, etc.
Okay, awesome. She also said, thank you. This answers my second comment, which is perfect.
Would you say there needs to be a few days before doing the rehab?
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff, Julia.
I hope that helps, Julia. Any other questions on that? And after you've been to see the guys, if you go and have a chat with the clinic or give them a call, just let us know in the group, and then we can go through things and give some more kind of comments and guidance. Oscar's also said, do you recommend full body massage in the spa? I don't recommend against it, as long as it's a good thing, right? Some people, especially with Oscar, now for reference, Oscar Oscar's up at 75 kilos on the squats for 10 reps. I think his hip hinge is around about 60 kilos, something like that. So he's a different person to someone who's just started, right? The person that's just started might find that a full body massage, actually, it makes them feel too wobbly and they lose, because there is a benefit to the tension going through the system, giving you an extra layer of support. Someone like Oscar who's further on, yes, 100%. Your once over massage, your IDD session, your once over at the chiro or the physio, those things can be incorporated strategically, especially as we move into the latter stages of the program. Once we've got the foundations, once we know that we're not going to walk out of the chiro feeling great and then go and bend in some funny direction because we're not mindful of those things. So I think that can have a role.
Fantastic. Okay, right. So
I think Gillian.
So this was going back to supplements. She was talking about creatine. And she asked if, I think she saw a special kind of women's targeted creatine, which was £30 for 120 grams. Yeah. And we just wanted to touch on this today.
Yeah. So on the topic of supplementation, what are we trying to do with our rehabilitation work? We are trying to build strength and stability. So those, again, Gillian would be kind of in that same category as for example, Oscar, maybe a little bit further on than Julia's comment. Okay. And she's working out, right? And the topic of, can I take some creatine? There's a lot of information out there nowadays about creatine. It's researched very, very well. But one of the things that is really a bad kind of stain on the supplement industry is just some of the marketing stuff, right? And we wanted to use this as an example, and hopefully it'll benefit some of the other guys watching this. She shared a creatine supplement that was marketed for certain, and they got a special thing in the creatine, it seemed to be, or a special form of creatine. By the way, none of the research is on a special form of creatine. And so it was almost £30 GBP for 120 grams. And on the back it says this special microionized something creatine monohydrate. That's all it had in it. But other versions will have other stuff in there, right, that you're buying. And then what we take is, again, 100% creatine monohydrate. And for 1 kilo, it's £30. And sometimes you can get it on a sale, right? Creatine is like other supplements. What would we have? Magnesium. It's like other supplements like vitamin D. There's no proprietary, patent on it. It's it's very easy. It's got market forces working on it. It's not expensive. And so be very careful in certain types of supplements where there's a special thing, especially something like creatine, guys. There's no special women's creatine, and there's no special pregnant ladies creatine, and there's no special brain boost creatine. If you're looking for the benefits of creatine, it's well researched, it's good, it's really helpful. It's something that we've been taking for a good while now, and we take regularly. In fact, I've got it in my bottle with my electrolytes in here. Okay. Drink plenty of water, that's important, but make sure you're not getting caught out spending what amounts to be almost 10 times the price. It's not far off, is it? 120 grams for pretty much £30 and 1 kilo for £30. Like, you're almost paying 10 times the price because it's marketed to a specific individual. And so just be mindful of that. And I think especially with creatine, you'll see a lot of people talking about that issue with it, that a lot of the research of creatine is on creatine monohydrate. It's not a special form of creatine. Creatine monohydrate is well researched and it's very affordable. Now, are there certain things you might want to be interested in from your personal points of view? The quality, the manufacturing procedures of the companies that make these kind of things. Yes, that's going to be important. One example where I think quality does make a difference from our personal experience, I remember the days at university where I'd take the cheapest protein that I could get hold of to support me, and you would suffer the consequences from a digestive point of view. And I think getting something that's a little bit more expensive on the protein front, for example, we currently take the whey isolate, so it is a little bit more expensive by comparison. It's around about £80 for 1.8 kilos, compared to maybe somewhere in the region of £45 to £50 for a cheaper form of protein. And I think that noticeably makes a difference. I think you probably agree with that, Lara. Yeah. In terms of you're taking it and you can taste and feel the texture, etc., of the difference, and the stomach a lack of issues in that regard. So I think that is somewhere where it's worthwhile, but there's obviously a cap on these kind of things. So just wanted to bring that up. I hope it's helpful for you. But why is this important? Because what are we trying to do with our rehab? The tissues that we have injured are ligamentous in nature. That means they're going to require collagen. We're also trying to, in the early and middle stages of the program, as well as long term, of course, build muscle tissue. We need protein. We need to support the protein synthesis that's trying to take place in those muscles as they adapt to our workouts. And so creatine plays that role. Protein takes that role. Ideally, you get your protein from your diet, from real foods. The question then is, are you actually meeting those targets or not? And if you aren't, looking at a supplementation to help you hit those figures is going to make sense.
Okay.
I think that's everything.
Yeah, well, Paul has said here, Mike, I used to take creatine daily when I was working out, but stopped taking it after my back injury. Is it worth me taking it again, even though my strength workouts aren't that strenuous / loaded?
I think Paul's had a good period of time, from what I understand, you're off work because of this. And I think up until very recently, when we started doing the phase 3 work, relatively inactive. And so in that scenario, I would actually say, yeah, no, I'd take it. I'd get back on board. I'll get back on board taking it. I see no downside. I see only upside, because you will have lost some element of muscle conditioning. I'm sure you're aware of that, and I'm sure you probably feel that, right? And I'm sure in the mirror, you can probably see that, particularly in the lower body, and maybe in the upper body too by this point as well, which is annoying and frustrating. But you are starting to do more in the way of workouts. You are making progress in that regard. And so fueling that adaptation process, I think, makes sense. I think it makes sense.
Okay, cool. Jackson has said here, I was told by my chiro that walking helps provide nutrients to promote disc healing. Is this the same for strength training?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things on this particular comment. So the reason that walking is beneficial is because you're not just still all the time. If it's still, you can't get exchange of fluid in and out of the discs. The discs need changes in pressure gradient in order for them to get that fluid. That's why decompression works so well, because it decompresses, creates a negative pressure in the disc to draw nutrients in. So it helps that process. But walking is not strengthening. I think walking is helpful for the healing and recovery process, but it is not strengthening. It is just walking to help ease the congestion that builds up in this area, to help change the pressure in a small way on those discs, as is contrasted with something like knee hugs or child's pose, where we're using large amplitude movements to put significant ranges of motion through that lumbar spine in a way that is problematic. We don't want to be doing that, certainly not if we've got a back injury. So we talk about walking, you know. It falls firmly in the category of relieving activities, meaning it is relieving the congestion that can build up in this area of the lower back. But you should not be walking and pushing through the pain, right? You should not be walking and finding that at the end of the walk you feel worse. So you have to get that dosage right. Very important.
Really interesting question here. Does this mean that you need to be careful losing weight during a back injury, i.e. is a calorie deficit / less protein a bad idea in the short term?
Yeah, so I can think of some people offhand where I've spoken to them, and this has been a real catalyst for them going very, very fast downhill before they join the program. I think the worst, because what happens is the person injures their back, then they get told they could lose a bit of weight, which would be helpful, right? And yeah, sure, the back having to bear less load makes sense, right? Then they go on this epic calorie restrictive diet, and what little muscle mass they have, they've lost even more, right? And going back to the topic of a live stream a couple of weeks ago, in the UK anyway, I forget if this was global, but I think it was just for the UK, 7%, 6 to 7% of men and 4-ish% of women have done strength training for longer than a year with any consistency. Now, there might be some variation on the numbers exactly, but we're still talking about 90%. So 90% of you guys have not done any significant strength training. So you've not done any significant resilience building. And I think ladies are certainly more guilty of this than men. You don't have a lot to lose. Just the sheer inactivity will be enough. And the rate at which we lose resilience in the body is significant, which is why advice to just do bed rest or just don't do anything or just not getting a handle on it sooner rather than later is poor. The only thing protecting this is the muscles. When you injure your knee, the only thing protecting it is the muscles. When you injure any area, the only thing that often is protecting the joint is control over the muscles, or the muscles controlling and protecting the joint. And so we can't protect the individual segments of our lumbar spine, but our midsection needs to be strong. Our legs need to be strong, and so often they are woefully inadequate in their strength. And so we have such weak legs that we find that over the years, we've been going around and we just bend our lower back because our legs are so weak. We're always doing this. We're getting out of chairs by just tipping ourselves up and getting up and going. And we hardly ever bend our knees and put any load through it in any significant way. So we have weak leg muscles. Our legs are like little popsicle sticks There is no muscle. Now, you don't have to be a bodybuilder, but an objective appreciation for how strong your legs are or aren't puts you firmly in a either safe category with plenty to lose, or a very vulnerable category that even a short period of inactivity will lead you to being fundamentally less able. I don't want to say disabled because that's the wrong word, but less able to participate in daily life. So it is a real issue. So many people do not objectively build strength and resilience in their lower back or in their body in general and partake in resistance training. And that is a serious issue. It is a serious issue. It's why so many people struggle.
Paul said here, I'm in a deficit because I don't want to put on too much fat whilst not as active as I usually am.
I think I'd make sure, Paul, that you are not in a serious deficit. You just want to be in a maintenance level. So it should not be a deficit. Because if your activity levels have dropped, then you just drop your food intake commensurately, right? If you were really active before and you were consuming 2,500 calories a day and your weight was stable, that's fine. But you don't want to be in a deficit. I would be very careful. I'd have a look at that. What is your protein intake on a daily basis? What is your calorie intake on a daily basis? And what's your approximate calorie expenditure? You are still a human being that burns calories every day just by doing nothing. And so if we're not meeting those needs, remember, the healing process is something that is quite requiring of nutrients. Whether it's healing from an infection, whether it's healing from something more sinister, whether it's healing from an injury like a back injury, it is very important that we fuel our body appropriately. And I would always say, you certainly want to be very careful about being in a deficit during that period of time. Very careful about that. You might lower your calorie intake, but that's only to make sure that you are balanced and not in a surplus. We're making a mistake if we're heavily negative. The other thing to bear in mind is the process of getting nerve signals going through your body is a draining one. The way in which the nerves send a signal along them requires you to expend energy to reactivate that nerve so that it can transmit a signal again. The sodium-potassium pump this is. It's a mechanism by which we prime the nerves so that they are ready with a resting nerve potential to receive a signal in all manners. But if you're constantly experiencing pain, you're constantly experiencing these nerve signals, you are going to be utilizing energy. So I would seriously have a think about the actual deficit that we might or might not be in. Generally speaking, I would suggest that the scales are a pretty good marker. If the scales are going down significantly, we want to be careful of that.
Yeah,
we want to be careful of that.
Okay, I'm glad that you hit that point home. That's perfect.
I think, Paul, just have a little reflection on that. If you're in the scenario like Paul, where you've got a bit of a background in working out, then you've got a bit more of an awareness of these kind of things. So just have a little think about that to make sure that you are a little bit close to maintenance, because otherwise, how are we going to heal?
Yeah.
How are we going to heal, right? It's going to be difficult.
Your cells will be craving those nutrients. Okay, right. Shall we move on to Anthony's question about the hip hinging? And then I think that also feeds in very nicely to Mary's question on that YouTube over there. Yep. So Anthony was making a little bit of an error, wasn't he?
Yeah, so one of the common errors that people make is when they're doing squats or hip hinges, we're so worried about rounding the lower back, understandably, that we get this cue to look up, because that helps you, like, subconsciously engage that posterior chain of muscles that run from here to here to keep you straight. The problem with this is that you find people end up doing this kind of thing. Whether it's a squat or a hip hinge, they're doing this. Keeping my eyes on the side up there, and they end up getting neck pain, shoulder pain, or aggravation. The best thing to think about here is when you are standing up ready to perform your exercise, imagine you have been impaled on a pike and it goes all the way through and out your head, okay? All the other way around. It's just a visual, right? You're going to remember it. You stood there, boom, straight through the top of your head. And the whole thing goes together. Now, granted, the reason that you're doing the look is to try and offset poor technique. But it should be very much, when we're doing the hip hinge, we're just going down. There's no joints moving. Everything is kind of staying straight. My spine is fused. The way in which we think about this is imagine your spine was fused. Every single joint along this entire column, when we do a hip hinge, we just do that. We don't do that and crank the neck. We just hinge in the hips. And if it's a squat, it's got that element of a hip hinge in it anyway. Again, we're coming down. We're not, right? Those things are incorrect. I mean, they're understandable because they are cues, and you might get away with them, right? That's fine. But if it's giving you neck trouble, you've got to stop it, right? If it's giving you neck trouble, and when I say neck trouble, it could be the neck coming down out to the shoulders, coming down to around about the shoulder blades. It's very common that people will say, I've got some pain between the shoulder blades, above what would be the bra strap level, normally on the side over here, on the corner of the scapula. And that's often associated with a neck issue rather than a shoulder issue. And we say it's a shoulder, but it's not really, it's the neck creating a bit of trouble there.
Okay, so Mary said here on YouTube, I have difficulty picking things up off the floor. I can hip hinge so far, but my knees are weak.
Yep.
And squeak the rest of the way.
Squeal.
Squeal.
Not squeak, they squeal. This is the reason the knees are, so a very important point. We always say my knees are weak, right? No, your knees are not weak. Your legs are weak. Your legs are weak and your knees feel pain. Because your legs are weak, right? They're not capable of supporting your body. By the way, again, this is a massive issue for people with lower back pain. It really is. People do not have strong legs because we sit down all day, right? We don't do very much. And unless we are one of the, 10% of the population that actually do this stuff, we have been just weakening since we became a teenager, right? When we were a teenager, as soon as our activity dropped off from being a child or teenager, everything gets weak. And so the reason is because it's more mechanically inefficient. The lower we go in a squat, the more strain there is on the leg muscles to keep everything together. That's why when people squat and they're not very strong, they go down and then they go, oh, down, or they do something like this to try and help support them because this creates extra support so the muscles don't have to do as much, right? Getting out of a chair, for example. And so the way in which we manage this, because the reality is people come into the program, they start trying to rehabilitate their lower back, and they're only at the point where they can squat like this. That's all their squat is. So that leaves me quite far away from the floor. Now you can get a picker, right? I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but actually that can really help some of you that are in a troublesome place. Or we're just strategic, right? But we have to compensate. And so when we go down, we try and keep a neutral spine, and maybe we're going to go up on the toes. We're down here like so. Maybe we're going to take one knee, and we're going to come down here. The reality is we aim for neutral, but the reality, you're not going to go to the bathroom, you're not going to get dressed in the morning without bending the spine. But at least once you're aware of these things, through the stuff we talk about in the program, you're going to start to be smarter about how you are doing things. So instead of picking something up off the floor like that and going, oh gosh, that hurt, you're a little bit smarter and you come down here and you grab it and then you get your chair, you wheel it back over and then keep a neutral spine and you come back up again, right? You're just more present-minded because you don't know what you don't know before, and now you know. And you're minimizing the number of things that you don't even know you don't know about. And that has a massive positive effect on the success that you're going to have. Now, if I go back to my knee injury from back in June, when I injured my knee, I could not squat. At this point, my knee gave way because I damaged the meniscus on both of them, right? What did I do during that period? Most of the time when I was doing stuff, Lara will be able to attest to this, I was having to do what a lot of you guys are doing without a knee injury. Bend and pick up stuff up, now bend over here, pick this up, come over and pick up this dumbbell with a rounded lower back. Like I had to do some of that stuff because I could not bend my knee because it was injured. I had to compensate. Thankfully, I got straight on with my rehabilitation work, and the period of time where I had to abuse my lower back to compensate for my significant knee injury was condensed, and then I can go back to moving in a more normal and appropriate manner. The problem is so many people that injure their back has been being abused for too long because they haven't built strong practices, movement patterns, etc.
Okie dokie.
Anything you think I should add there? Or should we just run through these?
Let's run through because we've got a lot of questions
Sally?
to cover, and I'm just looking at that. Yeah, Sally. So
let's go with Sally.
Let's do Sally, and then Tara, and then perhaps go into Sally's home gym essentials as well. So back to nutrition and protein intake. Sally said here, after I had a major surgery years ago, I had significant tissue healing issues. Things only improved when a dietitian reviewed my intake, my protein intake, and I changed my dietary intake. So
major surgery, a significant period of inactivity, you get a lot of muscle loss. It's got to be there. We've got to support that body.
Also, if you are, if you have a surgery and you're bedbound for a short amount of time, it is incredible how much muscle you lose so quickly.
I forget the exact details, but for those of you interested in this, have a look into it. When you have any kind of illness, infection, the body will literally rob your muscle tissue to build the immune system, components of the immune system. One of the subjects, cachexia, I believe it is, in cases of cancer patients. More muscle improves survivability, more muscle tissue, because you've got more resources within the body. That's why when you have an illness, a cold, a cough, anything of those sorts of things, something more sinister, something more significant, you lose muscle mass because the body will literally start breaking you down to fight the infection that needs to be fought. These things are important. Muscle is not, or it is nowadays, but for too long, its importance in our longevity, in our resilience as a human being, has been massively underplayed. Another stat, if you're over 65 and fall and break a hip, 25% of the people do not make it beyond a year. Some of those stats are quite concerning. What reduces your likelihood of breaking a hip when you fall over? Your vulnerability, your bone density, and your muscle mass, and your coordination.
Balance, yeah.
What improves all of those things that is free to do for every single one of you guys? Resistance training.
Yeah.
But only, 90% of you guys don't do it significantly over a long period of time.
And we're so fortunate to have all of this information.
Yeah, nowadays, yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
And we can do something about it.
And it is free to do. Like, okay, sure, you've got a gym membership maybe. You can start off at home.
A bit of commitment.
Yeah.
Bit of encouragement. We can do it, guys.
Yeah.
Tara said here, what if you have a significant amount of weight to lose? Is it best to wait until you're further along in your rehab first, then attempt the weight loss? I have other health concerns. Not too significant, though.
Slow anything tends to be better. And if you are sincerely adjusting your diet, working out more regularly, steadily you will lose the weight. Or rather, a more appropriate phrase would be, steadily you will recomposition. And I think this is so important to understand. Remember when we did the DEXA body scan? Like, if you're serious about understanding this, doing something like a DEXA body scan, which cost around about £150, gives you that full body composition in a way that's visible. And you realize all of a sudden, okay, yeah, I've got a good bit of fat, but I've got basically no muscle on my lower body, and I need to increase that. Now, as you increase that, especially for the beginners, you'll find you lose fat and you recomposition. So even the scales might not go down as fast. That's because you're building muscle being more dense than the fat that you're losing. And so you might not see the scales change in the way, but you'll see the mirror change much faster. Once you get a bit of momentum, of course.
Yeah, those of you on the private Facebook group, you uploaded your DEXA scan results.
I couldn't find it though.
This from years ago.
I tried.
So much on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll dig it out and maybe upload it again.
Search it within the group, and you can actually get a visual of Mike. Mike uploaded here, so you can actually see how much muscle to fat to bone ratio there is. And if you do actually have one of these scans, it is really remarkable. You see this, the layer. The small layer of muscle. This is all that is supporting my skeletal system, because everything else is the blubber, is the fat
or your knees.
That we don't really need.
Right?
Really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Even if you are training, and you think you're doing quite well, even for myself, I was pretty shocked. I was like, oh my goodness.
You see, there's like this stick of bone, and then there's this stick next to it, and this stick next to it. And you're like, oh, what's that? And you say, oh, that's that tiny bit of muscle. He's like, oh, okay. Not that yours was like that, but it often is, right?
It wasn't too far off, especially on the arms, etc. But that was really eye-opening and an incredible visual. So if you want to have a look, go ahead, guys, on that Facebook group. We'll try to find it for you. Just scroll down. I feel like Tara has come back with something. Gained weight as I was housebound, for several years due to illness. Though in a 500 calorie deficit, I aim between 100 and 125 grams of protein a day on average. The muscle is certainly building. You can see it. That's so
Tara, I would personally be a bit cautious about 500 calorie deficit. I think that's too much. If a typical adult is going to be somewhere in the region of 200 calories a day, I think that's a little bit too much. A little bit too much. I would suggest personally. One of the things to bear in mind as well on calories, fitness trackers often grossly overestimate. They're very, very inaccurate with how many calories you're consuming during your exercise. So you need to be very mindful of those kind of factors. Going over to Paul, he said, I thought my legs were fairly strong when I worked out. My leg days were carefully structured to avoid loading the lower back, belt squats. I think that's definitely, when I worked out, yeah.
My leg days were carefully to avoid loading the lower back.
Why were we avoiding loading our lower back on our leg days? Like, I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, why? Why were we avoiding loading the lower back when we were doing leg work? Interesting to think about, right?
Right. Hi, Mike. Currently have 2 weeks of contractors in the house and then a long holiday. How do I go forwards with the plan? Somewhat stagnated given the business of the season and all of this house stuff. Also, there is a more stiffness due to all of the house stuff and shortened time frames for the day is just busy. In fact, I have reduced the weight bearing so I don't get a reversal. Previously 33 kilos on the squats, now with squeezing in exercises coming off to 22 kilos.
What I would try and do often in this sort of scenario, like everybody has these seasons, right? Busy spells. Maybe it's illness, maybe it's something else.
Maybe it's an ear infection.
Maybe it's an ear infection. Maybe it's an eye infection, right? And we have to go through a period of stagnation. And the best thing to do in these sorts of scenarios is I think she's already done the right stuff, right? We've scaled it down a touch and just acknowledge it. That's the most important. Acknowledge that there is a reason why in a month or two's time, we haven't necessarily made as much progress as we hoped 6 months ago, right? We've had this little pause moment, but we've got through it without any significant consequences, doing all sorts of out of the ordinary activities and still quote unquote got away with it. We do a bit more of our care of self work. We factor in workouts when we can. And if we're not feeling like we want to do a hard workout, we can potentially just look at doing something like a discovery workout. You don't have to arbitrarily do 22 kilos. You could really use the principle of the discovery workout and go, right, each time I go to work out, sorry about the sandwich truck outside. Each time I go to work out, I'm going to do, I was doing 33 kilos, I'm doing 22. Well, actually, do you know what? The last few days have been quite easy in my daily life with all the contractors and everything. I haven't been that busy. We've got a little bit quiet. I'll see how I feel doing 24 kilos. Because 22 is actually feeling pretty easy today. I'll give it a go at 24. Oh, maybe I did 26. Okay, great. Don't try and push yourself to new limits, right? If we were previous on 33 kilos, we don't want to try and chase extra results. Where people make mistakes is they're chasing progress, they're up to 33 kilos, then they're going into this season of other stuff that's busy, and then they're trying to push up to 40. No. Take a step back. Maybe you maintain it at 33. Maybe you maintain the workouts at a little bit less because you don't feel like you can push it. But then once the season ends, we then go back into trying to push up. And this is one of the fundamental reasons why I always say to you guys, you should never be aiming to plateau long term. So I've got enough strength, I'll stick here. You should never be aiming to plateau. That's a really important principle because stuff happens and we get little steps back. If you're always aiming to go in that direction, when you have those little bumps, you're always programmed to be going up. If you're programming on plateauing, you aren't in the practice of building. And so it's so easy to have something happen and then you drop down and then you drop down and then you drop down. And before you know it, you look around and you go, what am I doing all the way down here? Yeah. Not a good position to be in. So we've got to be strategic in those sorts of scenarios.
We've had a little bit of a month of that. You had your eye infection and then I was a little bit unwell, and the girls got unwell, and now I have an ear infection. I'm basically deaf in one ear. It's just ongoing, and of course the whole household is affected. My training's been affected. Your training's been affected. You just can't plan these things. So if you,
I haven't done jiu-jitsu in nearly a month,
and we were doing so well beforehand. So thankfully we were, and we'll come out of it and then we'll carry on. But what Mike says is absolutely spot on. You have to keep consistent when you are good, when you feel good, when you are healthy, when you have the time.
And don't beat yourself up as well. Can't do everything at the same time. Like we do have only so many hours in the day. Don't beat yourself up in these sorts of scenarios. Focus on getting better. I had to focus on getting better with the eye, do my stuff, etc. And now steadily feed in. And I'm doing discovery style workouts with my workouts at the moment.
Yes.
I'm not pushing it. I'm not killing myself.
Absolutely. And when I do get back into it, because it's been at least 2 weeks off for me, I will again do discovery. I will not go in as hard as I was going before.
Yeah. No way.
I'll be very tentative. Okay. Good. So should we do?
I think just finish up with these ones here and then come over to the ones on the screen there.
We've got so many questions.
I think I've got. Tara said it again really well. We've done that one.
Yes.
Chris says I've a lateral shift in my shoulders shifted towards the painful size. It seems unusual. How I know that rehab should resolve this. It's very common to get an antalgic posture, leaning one side to the other, forwards, backwards. You get some people that can't straighten out. Very, very common when we have a back injury. Paul said,
so Tara came back, Paul came back. Oh, that was because of...
so Paul was using the belt squat because of an earlier injury. I'd question what was the early injury. What was the earlier injury, Paul, that led you to doing the belt squat? Very important thing to consider. If it was a back injury of some description, that's something to really, really think about. That preceded, this injury. Often, someone in their younger years will have an injury of their back. Maybe they push themselves a little bit too hard on the gym. I have, certainly. We've done some questionable squats over the years, some questionable deadlifts, I'm sure, when I've been pushing myself. You have an injury and then some well-meaning doctor says, don't ever do squats again. You shouldn't do that. It's bad for your back. Oh, there we go, Paul, as if on cue. It was a lower back injury. So many of you have been told, don't load the spine after a lower back injury, as in ever again, that you shouldn't do that. And it leads to precisely these kind of problems. It leads to these difficulties. We've got a history of a back issue. And now we've had this scenario where we've had a flare-up, we've had a back issue. We've been told then to stop loading the back, and all that happens is the back becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And what's worse about this is you're not actually strengthening in an integrated manner. We're not strengthening the back with the legs. We're strengthening the legs without the back, which creates this issue. And Paul has said it was bad form on a low row machine. It's not even that it was not even doing a back exercise, right? It was getting a little bit of extra oomph into that row when we were probably doing seated rows. I'm sure I've got an idea of what we were doing in that sort of scenario for Paul. Very, very common that these kind of things happen. Super common. And guys, it's just a case of, that's why education is so important. Think about it. Never do loaded exercises on your spine because that puts pressure on your injured back. That's not a long-term strategy. That's not rehabilitation. That might be the first thing that we need to do. Note, in the program, we say you guys should do squats, hip hinges, you should build load, but you start off with body weight, but there is not a long-term never do loading again. That is absolutely preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. You have to rebuild health and resilience. Going on, just following on with this train here, and then I'll come back to some of the earlier comments. Paul said, I then pulled it again, picking up a suitcase on holiday. So gradually the back has been getting weaker and weaker. This is exactly what happens. Paul's there like, man, I'm working out. I'm doing my belt squats on 150 kilos. And then a suitcase has got me because we didn't rebuild the strength of the back. We just worked around a vulnerable back. Healing and strengthening are two ends of the same thing, right? We have to do this. And unfortunately, that makes for a more difficult, challenging process when we do eventually get to actually doing this thing properly again. So, this is why the education, we start to see why some of us struggle with certain things. Even though we might have trained in the past, we've got certain backgrounds that we didn't think were relevant. And now we see, maybe this is relevant to why we've been struggling to get better. I think I'm a gym goer because I work out in the past, but actually I've been working out everything apart from the very section that is in question. And these sorts of things are very, very interesting. Very interesting for you guys to reflect on. And hopefully these kind of questions kind of walk you guys through it. Mary said, thank you for the advice. I am 81. Fantastic. Fantastic, Mary. We get people of all sorts of ages.
That's incredible, Mary. So
We get people of all sorts of ages.
Yeah,
She's starting hip hinging, but she's struggling to get down on the floor. Everybody at different ages has different challenges. Mary, being 81, has a different set of challenges and a different set of benefits to someone who's 18 or 21, who's just injured their back. Yes, sure, that younger person has the youth on their side, but they will not be patient. They will trip themselves up in different ways, right? Whereas we have other attributes as we are a little bit older. And so, you see some people really, really struggle when they're young to get better from back pain because they don't have certain attributes that are really important when in recovering from an injury. What else have we got here? Jackson said, would you have any advice for sustaining impacts like a bumpy car rides, bike riding, walking down hills? How would your program help with this? You build resilience first. We don't look at feeding those things in until we've built good resilience. It's just about building resilience in the lower back. But if we're struggling to load bear, this is why doing things like static holds, right? So you'll see like doing a static hold, holding a plank or holding a hip hinge or something like that, they don't make sense, right? Because if we take the example of sustaining impacts in a bumpy car ride, that's a series of bang, bang, bang of 20 to 40% more load on the lumbar spine. And the bangs are going to increase that loading. How does this give me any inclination? Or this isn't training loading. This is training a set load for tolerant, or a set amount of load, however much you're multiplying the body weight with, if it's just doing body weight holds. It's not giving us that real figure understanding. right? I talk about the 20 kilos and the 45 kilos for me, that 20% and 45% of your body weight, roughly, right? That's what's going through your spine when you're sitting. Your rehab should give you some kind of information as to the current status quo in your lumbar spine. Being able to hold a position for 2 minutes is irrelevant. It's not very useful to know that, unless you're talking about the fact that you're going to be preparing vegetables over the kitchen sink for 20 minutes, right? Leading up to Christmas or just gone Thanksgiving for those of you in the US, right? Yeah, sure, okay, that's helpful. But in the scenario here, we're talking about what Jackson is actually asking is not how long can I have sustained impacts in a bumpy car ride, is how would I know that I can deal with banging 40 kilos on my spine repeatedly? Well, a good indicator would be that you can bear more than 40 kilos on a squat and hip hinge at least. At least that gives us some kind of indication. Something to think about there. Hopefully that sparks some kind of thoughts in that scenario. Chu has said stagnation season until the end of January, really. We'll get going into 2026. These things happen. Just do the best to maintain. If you can try and keep the top end loading relatively close to you, that would be better, because it gives your spine chance to continually adapt to that kind of loading. And just make sure you keep doing your lower body stretching, and you don't wait until you feel bad. You evaluate objectively, how much strain do I think I've kind of put through my body in this particular scenario? I had to do this thing with the contractors. How much strain? Is it been out of the ordinary? Yes. Okay, let's do a bit more care of self stuff. A bit more towel decompression, bed decompression, contrast bathing, etc. Some massage gun once over, etc. James has said here, 75 kilo Bulgarians, and I still have feet tingling and back pain. The extra details in this are really important, James. I don't know if you're in the program or not. If you are, let us know. And a little bit more detail is important. James says, I have Bulgarians up to body weight and still have feet tingling in everyday life. It's precisely when are we having the feet tingling? What are we doing at the time? Are we having the feet tingling while we're doing the Bulgarian split squats? In which case we're not doing them in an aggravation-free manner. A little bit more detail in those sorts of scenarios, because for some of you guys, you will get to the point where you actually have a good level of spine mobility, of spine strength, but you have very poor levels of flexibility. And so those factors need to be addressed. This is an example that is much, much, much more rare, assuming that when James is doing his Bulgarian split squats, he is not getting any aggravation. If he is, well, you're pushing yourself too hard on the exercises. You're not at a point that's aggravation-free. So those are the kind of things where, guys, do a post when we've got those kind of situations, do a post in the members area so we can understand these things in a little bit more detail. What else have we got here? Go Circus said, any advice on delayed flare-ups and how far to push through things? I get zero pain during the movement, but pay for it 2 to 3 hours later. Another example where the detail is very, very important. What phase are we in the program? How much load are we using during our exercises and during our workouts? If we're not using a significant amount of load and we're early on in the program, say phase 1 and phase 2, and we're finding that when we do our phase 1 and 2 workouts, we get no aggravation, but it's later on in the day, most of what you're doing outside of the workouts is significantly more strenuous than what you're doing in the workout. So look at everything else. Be extra critical of everything else. Most people that come into the program are not coming into the program when they don't have pain. They're coming into the program because they've been forced to do it because they are struggling, not because they're pain-free. And so aggravations from one moment to the next are still a feature until you've built in that protection. You don't wait to be pain-free to start the rehab. You go through the rehab to help you recover from the pain and the injury, not the other way around. And so that's a very important point for reflection as well. Very important. Paul has said, so has my disc been getting weaker and weaker through these situations to result in herniation? It's certainly not been getting stronger, Paul. When you have the injury, you need to go about the process of rehabilitation to rebuild the strength in the areas of the back that have been injured. And if we don't do that, we've never rebuilt any strength or resilience. It would have been interesting to see, although we can't go back and do this retrospectively, what would you have squatted in the months after with load, without aggravation, in the months afterwards? What kind of weight would we have squatted? What kind of weight did we squat before we injured our back? Or doing the row, doing the bent over row? Those are important things. At the end of the day, we can't change them, but that is the importance. So many people, their body will go through a healing process, but you forget As you were a teenager, maybe you were a particularly active teenager and you worked out a little bit and you continued that onto your 20s, you were building resilience at the best time in your life to do so for decades without interruption of any significance. Then you have an injury which basically zeroes the strength of that disc because you can't even bear your own body weight, and you have to then reintegrate the strength of that disc into the rest of the body. That takes time, and if you haven't done that, it's only going to have re-strengthened in accordance with what you've exposed it to on a daily basis, which has probably been picking up some 20 plates to put them on the bar to do all of the other stuff, and that's been about it. And so the level of strength that that disc and that section that has been injured has adapted to has been very, very low bar, very low bar. Whilst we are getting an additional sense of maybe perhaps incorrect comfort in the strength of everything below here because we're doing very strong belt squats. So like, man, I'm belt squatting 150 kilos. I must be strong. It's like, yeah, your legs are, but they don't integrate very well into your lower back because that can't deal more than 20. We can see how we now have a problem. Mary said, thanks for the advice. I'm 81, finding things more difficult. Miss my golf. I can do 9 holes, but it takes a while to recuperate afterwards. Indoor bowl's not too bad. The biggest thing here, Mary, is just build resilience. You go at your pace. And that's one of the big things about the program, right? Everybody goes at their own pace. You find the variations you can do. You acknowledge that. You acknowledge that maybe you're running a bit short of what you need to be doing. And then you build up from there. How much does, for example, Mary, how much do your golf club's bag weigh? And how much are you squatting and hip hinging? And that probably means that the golf club's bag, even though you might not have to do much, you've got to put it in the car, you've got to take it out, right? We're exposing ourselves to more strain than we are in our exercises, so we've got to work on getting that up. As we do that, our bodies respond. Our bodies respond. They do at all ages. What else have we got here? Tara, every time you mention load on the spine when I'm sitting, I'm compelled to get up. I need to have this on in the background at all times. Just go through that one there.
Is that Jackson?
Yes.
So Jackson said, yes, thank you. I had to give up my jobs as a snowboard instructor and as a excavator driver because of these impacts. Sorry guys, the text is so far away and small. I did say to you.
I think someone needs glasses. I think my eyes were better when I got my eye checked. That was 2020.
It's also at a funny angle.
Okay.
It is. It's literally like a meter away.
Would these still be achievable in the future?
Would these still be achievable in the future with appropriate loading? Okay, those.
The idea, guys, if you do your appropriate rehab, and this is an important thing, when people say, how healed am I? Healed for what? Jackson has the inclination to do certain things that require better conditioning than maybe the average person from a job point of view, etc. So you just have to build yourself up. There are no things you can or can't do. I use the example frequently of the individual that used to train at my gym, jiu-jitsu gym. He got a herniated disc in the lower back and is back competing in jiu-jitsu after having foot drop and a surgery within like 9 months. It was the same year they got back into jiu-jitsu. Now the risks to one's limbs and one's body in jiu-jitsu are significant. Like, that's the problem, right? Not the back. The back wasn't the problem. The problem is everything else you're going to be exposed. You're going to break an arm. You're going to do all this kind of stuff, right? Jackson going back into doing snowboarding. There are many risks, and Jackson will know of many people that get stretchered down the mountain, unfortunately, each season because they've injured themselves. Your back won't be a reason, if you rehabilitate properly, for you not being able to do those things. If you rehabilitate properly. But if we get caught out, like with Paul's bad advice in the past, oh, well, don't strengthen the back up, don't do anything, then you have no idea as to how strong you are or aren't. It's not foolproof, right? It's not foolproof at all. But it is the best we've got in terms of having that squat or hip hinge load in your mind. That's the best thing we've got. Best thing we've got. James has said, I just get feet tingling, just everyday life, and it's constantly there at 2 out of 10. I think the important thing there is to have a look. Is there anything you can do to make it worse? That's probably the most helpful thing that you can consider at this point. It's a 2 out of 10, very low grade. And good flexibility. What that means, we need to evaluate. This is where, James, doing a post in the members area would be a very good idea. Get a post in there and we can go through that in more detail.
Yeah.
because we need more detail.
Some more detail, some more background.
We've had it with Paul on today's chat though. Some of the stuff that Paul shared with us in this that I didn't know. That background, that's so relevant.
Yeah, the previous
and obviously sharing that in.
Paul also said here, right, I'm off to do my weighted hip hinges, Spud. You go, Paul.
Nice. Yeah, just make sure they're aggravation free, Paul. Aggravation free, correct choreography, do our post-workout stuff. We will get there. We will get there. Tara said, I'm contemplating phase 4 3 times a week. Is it enough while still progressing in the weights? I would like to do more, but getting DOMS, which prevents this. So most people will aim, like long term, they'll be doing 2, maybe 3, but mostly 2 high loading sessions a week for the spine. That's what we talk about in phase 4. So Tara, I would certainly be going through the phase 4 strategy material right now, because once you're at a certain level, like we're doing at 12 kilos, right? After the flu, etc., right? You do the discovery workout, you find 12 kilos, and then you need to do the phase 4 style workouts, and then you dip back in and out, right? There's no weight level that triggers you moving into phase 4. You do a discovery workout once or twice, reach the top, and then you're in phase 4. And then we talk about in phase 4 using 2 strategies to increase the weight. We can either do it incrementally, then there's segments on how to do that, or we can go back into phase 3 and do a whole nother discovery workout. But most of your working out really should be with the phase 4 videos. That's what we should be doing each time. And then dipping back in and out of the phase 3 from time to time. And there's also valuable educational units there in phase 4 that you really want to be covering, strategy that you really want to be covering at that point. And what we also talk about, some of the members that are a bit further on, I think maybe Gillian with reference to her question, you're doing a hard workout, and then you might, after that, you might do a low load active recovery day. We talk about that in phase 4 as well. So it might be that you're actually working out 4 or 5 days a week. You're having 2 raw rest days, but 2 of those sessions in the week are actually lower load. So you're usually using your 20 kilos, let's say, but on those low load days, you're just going through the motions, practicing your technique, going through the squat, etc. Tara said, oh, she is in phase 4. Good work. Good work.
The other thing that makes me think about is Tara mentioned about her 500 calorie deficit and her and now she's mentioning DOMS here as well. Just something to
certainly 100%. Thank you, Lara. That's really good. That will definitely be related to your DOMS, Tara. If you're on a calorie deficit, you will be struggling more with DOMS. What is DOMS? A difficulty to recover from the workout. And so, I would.
I don't want to be too harsh about it, Tara. Just something to really think about.
No, for 100%.
Yeah.
When I do not get my nutrition right, I am aware of decreased recovery times.
Yes.
And that's really important, because we've twigged on something there from the comments that could really make a massive difference, almost night and day, relatively quickly for Tara. If she's trying to run and grow, like bodybuilders will lose. So this is worth mentioning. A bodybuilder, when they go in a calorie deficit to cut before a show, for example, they will lose muscle because they're in a calorie deficit and they're trying to refine things, which is why they over-egg it on the off season and then they trim back down again, right? Yay, more food. Yeah. So if you're trying to heal and build muscle, they're just trying to build muscle. They're not trying to heal as well, although you could say they're one and the same. If we're trying to recover from a back injury and build muscle and we're in a massive calorie deficit, we're not going on stage, Tara, or maybe not just yet, right? Focus on getting the appropriate nutrition for your body. It needs to heal. It needs the resources. Make sure there's good stuff, right? But 3 times a week is certainly enough if you're working out well, if we're working out hard. But I would definitely say we've undervalued the recovery side of things, which is one of the big things that the big mistakes people make is they undervalue the recovery side of things. Getting your recovery stuff right.
Yeah, Tara, look into creatine, look into your electrolytes as well.
And Paul said here, maybe I should be thinking of phase 4 myself. Yes, I mean, once you've done the discovery, Paul, you have a look through that material. Certainly. Basically, the way the program is structured, phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Phase 1, 2, and 3 is basically to make you safe so you can actually do the work. Mm-hmm. That's it. Most of you should get to that level, and then you spend, phase 4 is the long term, right? That's what you're doing for the long term. But you have to get it right. And so different people take different times, and it's not about the number on the weights that you're using. It's about you going through the process of being able to safely apply load at the right level for your body so you can actually make a change in your body. Remember, the muscles change in a matter of weeks, and the ligaments and the structures like the discs change in a matter of months when you are putting them under the appropriate amount of strain. Phase 1, 2, and 3, or until you've done 3, aren't doing that. They are just making you safe so that you can do it. For example, many people will come into the program and they might get away with doing a squat like this. That's fine. If you keep that technique and go into phase 4 and have 40 kilos on the bar, you're not going to be fine. You're going to get trouble. That's going to happen. So we have to get you technically safe first, then understand that actually doing a squat with your hands out in front, for some people, it's quite a big change when they're doing a squat like that. So you've got to make sure you're comfortable doing that. And then we can start loading up with all the weights and things to make it effective for building strength. Some people come into the program and go, what, Mike, you mean I'm not building strength when I'm in phase 2? Of course not. Some of you guys, will be holding a mug, or you're holding a phone, or you're holding a spine to do your squats, just to get the choreography right. That's not building strength. You don't finish your squats or your hip hinges or maybe your dead bugs. For some of you guys, you will. They will be actually appropriate. But you don't finish your squats and go, goodness me, I could not do another 2 of those. You could have kept on doing it. If I was stood next to you, I said, do 2 more. You could have done 2 more. If I said, do another 2 after that, you could have done another 2 after that, and you would have been fine. That's not building strength. We have to get to the right intensity. Very important. And just to that end, with regards to Sally's comment about a home gym setup, and then we'll get to some more of the comments on the YouTube.
Sorry, just a really quick one. I saw that Anthony, he was live with us on TikTok. I don't know whether you still are, Anthony, but we did address your question about the neck earlier on. I can't remember what timestamp that was.
It was near the start.
It was
guys,
it was near the
if
start.
you are watching on TikTok, definitely get over onto the YouTube. Much, much better.
Yeah.
Also, we got all the comments down here.
Yeah.
And also the recording is basically available immediately on YouTube as well, guys.
Awesome.
Yes,
Yeah, let's
Sally.
Yes, Sally.
So Sally wanted a bit of information. Some of you guys are going to work out in the gym. Some of you guys, you don't want to go to the gym, it's not convenient, etc. And it's just a quick comment on home gym setups, right? If you do the calculation and you get your 40% of 40 and 90% load figures, so that's 20 and 45% of your body weight, you need to have these numbers to hand. For me, again, it's 20 and 45 to 50 kilos. Right? Those figures, and you need to have them in your mind. And so once you've got those figures, you can then think about, okay, well, I want to, if I'm going to do a home workout, I want to have something like a 20 kilo weighted vest. Why? Because it's very convenient to have little 1 kilo increments that you can go up in. Quite nice for your phase 4, for making progress. Also, a lot of individuals will find that once they get to a certain point, they struggle to actually hold onto the weights. The weights become a little bit just too difficult, right? You're trying to hold on to, I won't grab the 30 because it's all the way over there, but you're trying to hold on to this and it's kind of slipping out your fingers, and that just becomes a little bit too much of an issue. So you need to be able to mix and match a dumbbell with a weighted vest, and that, for most people that work out home, will get you pretty close to that 75% of body weight to 100% of body weight. Pretty close, right? Maybe not all the way there, but it'll get you pretty close. And so you can build a good degree of resilience objectively at home with just an adjustable dumbbell and a weighted vest. And remember, your grip strength will improve over time. So you might not be able to hold that now, but over the years you will. If you want to spend more money, you can get something like a Vultra, which is a great bit of kit, but that is significantly more expensive. Right? So you've got, those are the main avenues. You've got things like Bowflex dumbbells, you've got power blocks, where you can get, I think there's, some of them go from somewhere between 30 kilos and 50 kilos in one dumbbell. And it's got a very small footprint. You put it in the corner, try and get someone else to bring it in the house, right? And put it in the corner, and you can use it in 2 kilo increments. So again, you've got this scalability for the long term. These are the best things by far that you can invest in if you're doing a home gym setup, right? Because we just need that squat and that hip hinge. And then you could, of course, get a set of bands, or you can get something like that Vultra to be able to do other stuff. If you're interested, you can get a cardio machine if you want to. But the essentials, the weighted vest and the adjustable dumbbell, are really, really good for a lot of people.
Okay, super.
Yeah?
Good stuff.
That was that one.
Nike about
yes,
the squat.
I'll do that, and then I'll just come back to the YouTube after that. So Nike had a good question, or a question, about a common question about the squats. And so when you're starting out, this is early on in the program, when you're starting out, we know that we're not very good at the hip hinges for some of us, right? And even with a neutral spine, certain people, based on the tolerance of their disc, you have to understand that even with a neutral spine, that position exerts more strain through the lumbar spine and the injured disc than that position and then that position. This is the least strenuous. Obviously, if you're lying down in that position, then there's no strain. But the hip hinge I'm talking about, this is more strenuous, even in a neutral position. So naturally, people try and squat more upright. The problem is that's not ideal. It's not good long-term practice. So we want to have some element of hip hinge. Different people have different morphology. Some people have longer thighs relative to the length of their torso than others. That's just the way we are, okay? But it does affect the levers at play when we do a squat. So if you have longer thighs, you're going to have to hip hinge more on your squat. And as long as it's with a neutral spine, that's perfectly normal squatting form. Some people will be able to stay up very upright and do that, but I fall backwards because my thighs are too long. Right? Typically speaking, you might say Asian individuals tend to do very well. You see them looking very, very good in like the Olympic lifts because they've got more equal length of legs to spine. So they stay a lot more upright in a squat. It's just anatomy for one individual to the next. But it is perfectly normal to hip hinge when we are doing a squat. It's part of the movement and a perfectly normal part of the movement. One great tool to help you guys make sure you're doing this properly is the tape test, and where we stick some tape along our spine to make sure that as we do the squat, we're not rounding our lower back because the tape will pull off. And there's a dedicated video of that. If you guys want a link, just do a post in the, in fact, while you're having a look at the comments, Lar, I'll just get that video up.
Okie dokie. Right, so
Can you see them?
yeah, I can see them. Chris said I might join a gym. It's a great time to start as they are deserted in December. So that was quite relevant to Sally's comment. Sally, if you are live with us, hopefully that was helpful for you.
Guys on YouTube, I've just posted the link to the tape test videos in the chat.
And just a comment for the guys on TikTok. I know that we've had quite a few people with us and loads of questions coming in. It's much better for you to jump onto the YouTube because it is really, really difficult to keep track of some of the questions. Although we'll go through one on TikTok just towards the end. But yeah, let's carry on with some of the. I think they're more kind of comments.
Yeah, so Paula said, I think I made a mistake of reaching a phase and watching all the videos in that phase, but then not watching the next phase material.
Not moving on.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a common.
I think it definitely is. You know, one of the common videos that people miss all the time, right? You watch the strategy videos, right? And then you go into the tutorials, you're working on that, and then you do a live workout, and then you're like, when do I move on? And you forget to go back to look at the when to move on to the next phase video in the strategy section. And it kind of tells you, try to remind them, what am I aiming for each time, right? When do I move on to the next phase? And that's the last segment on each of the strategy sections for each of the phases, so you know when to move on. Very important.
What do you recommend for me 1 week post L5S1 microdiscectomy? Where can I start?
What's that question?
Which phase? That one, the N, the big N, Nora.
Oh yeah. What do you recommend? 1 week post L5.
So when can I start the phases?
I'd argue immediately. And the reason for that, we've got a video on the microdiscectomies. I mean, by all means, you've got have a conversation with your surgeon because they will have given you some element of guidance. I hope. Sometimes they haven't, unfortunately. What are you doing every day? This is the most important thing. And to be honest, even when you join the program, right, there's a lot of educational material that you need to be going through anyway. So that's worth covering that as quickly as possible because you don't want to push yourself too hard in those weeks after the operation. However, learning how to control your spine is kind of a given because you often get told, just walk a bit, don't sit down, don't bend or twist, and don't lift anything, right? That's really rubbish guidance because that doesn't even cover how did you get home from the hospital after the surgery. You had to get in and out of the car and do all these other things. So learning and having appreciation, holding onto a chair, for example, and just doing a squat to realize that that's all I can do. I can't squat all the way down to here just yet because my back rounds and I don't have the control and I don't have the leg strength. You should always be observing aggravation-free and correct choreography when you're doing your exercises. That needs to be a guiding golden rule or rules. And so as long as you are doing that, I would strongly contest that the exercises in phase 1, when done diligently and correctly in a studious manner, not done recklessly, right? That will be the safest part of your entire day. Because everything else you're doing, from answering the doorbell, for Amazon, to getting dressed in the morning and going to the bathroom, all of those things have no guidance or instruction and are significantly more problematic than carefully controlled rehabilitative exercises focused on aggravation-free and correct choreography with a neutral spine. That's kind of my big case there.
Okay, Nora, hope
that
helps you there. Let's move on to Troy, who's also talking about a microdiscectomy. So 1 year on, I'm increasing my weight with deadlifts and squats, and it's going well. I am, however, not very flexible, unable to bend forwards and touch my toes. Is this normal?
So for a lot of the guys, I say typically the girls or ladies find it harder to build that early stage, right? They've got preconceptions around strengthening and I don't want to lift too much and all that kind of stuff. And they haven't got experience doing it maybe. And so they struggle to get going, but they tend to be maybe a little bit more flexible. And so once they start to build strength, they've got good flexibility, although not always, by the way. And so the flexibility starts to aid them. Guys, on the other hand, right, we often don't have such good flexibility, right? I'm put to shame by some of the ladies that put their hip hinges into the videos and their back's horizontal. I can think of one individual, Oscar, looking at his hip hinges, absolutely fantastic. I need to work on my flexibility.
Yeah, you do.
I do,
you
okay?
Are terrible.
But that will almost certainly be the issue here. With regards to Troy's comment, one of the things we talk about, get your loading up to a good level, right? What's a good level? For guys, I would seriously be looking at not worrying until your loading is around about that 75 to 100% of your body weight, without aggravation, with correct choreography on the given movement. And then look at your hip mobility. Is your hip mobility appropriate? And you can see that when you do a hip hinge, for example. I would be careful with the deadlifts if we don't have appropriate mobility, because I'd be wondering, how are you getting down to the bottom? What's happening? What's it costing you to get down to the bottom? And would a hip hinge be a smarter strategic movement than the deadlift in that particular scenario? And if we're doing certain types of deadlift, we're just doing squats with a different position. So we may as well just do squats and a hip hinge instead. I would suggest that might be a smarter move. Something to consider in that scenario. We need to improve our hip mobility. And that can actually be done with really thoughtful hip hinges. A lot of you guys will notice that if you're, especially later on, once you're confident with the exercises and you've made some good progress, when you do set 1 on your hip hinges at your target weight and set 4 and 5, you can probably find that you can get a little bit more range of motion. And so you can utilize the hip hinge specifically to improve the mobility of the hamstrings, which will improve that parameter that's just mentioned. And so that's something to bear in mind as well. These are the kind of things where, get a post into the Facebook group, get a post into the members area, so we can see what the squats actually look like, because seeing gives us so much more context. You'd have to write an essay to accurately describe what we're currently doing in the Facebook comment, in the live comments, and it just wouldn't be feasible to deal with those kind of comments. But that's where in the members area you can go into this level of detail. There's a video in there, we can see it, we can comment, and so on and so forth. Tara said a bench for the adjustable dumbbells to sit on was a good investment for me. Oh, yeah. No, I do think it's a good investment to get those. Like the Bowflex have a little thing. Yeah, it's a bit expensive, but even just any kind of bench, get the other half to put it on the side, and that way you can get into things in a much easier way than having to mess around on the floor.
Paul said about the 1 kilo increments. 1 kilo increments for his dumbbells.
If you've got a 1 kilo attachment, then yeah, use it. I wouldn't say going out and buying a specific one. Say for example, you've got the Bowflex dumbbells, or you've got another adjustable dumbbell that went up in increments of 2 or 2.5. I wouldn't go out and buy specific 1 kilo additionals, but if you've got them, certainly. That just makes for you dialing in the process a little tighter. And that's all, Paul. It's just going to help you be a bit more conservative. So I'd say that's certainly a reasonable thing to do. I think that brings us to the end.
Yeah.
We've overran quite considerably.
I know, but Cece's being very good, so I was like, let's just keep going, and lots of fun questions. Okay, so we just had one, well, we actually have had a couple of requests for extension of the Black Friday, so I just wanted to bring that up, just so we can touch on that.
Yeah, guys.
This person also said, hang on, sorry, because their comments are sporadic. Which phase do you suggest tapering off pain relief? Or is this case specific?
That's very much case specific, but I would argue you should be using the minimum necessary dosage. And so discuss that with your GP. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm taking this medication, but I don't really think it's working. It's like, well, why are you taking the pain medication then? But one thing to watch out for, those of you that have been on pain medications for a long period of time, is that what happens is you come into the program, your level of pain is up here, and you're taking the medication, right? So it's a question like, is it actually even doing anything? But you can discuss that and think about that. And often you do think about that. And then you start to improve because you're aggravating things less. And then you reduce the dosage here with appropriate guidance, of course. and then your pain levels come back up a little bit, and then they go down again, and then up, and then down again. And that, I liken that to saying that if you're outside with sunglasses on, you take your sunglasses off, and all of a sudden you go, gosh, and your eyes take a moment to adjust, and then they adjust back to the normal, right? And that's the kind of way in which I kind of help you guys understand the fact that it's normal to get that kind of recoil when you lower the dosage, but you should certainly, if you've been prescribed some of these medications, you need to be consulting with your prescribing physician or your GP to make sure there are no unforeseen withdrawal components to the medications that you are taking. So a little bit of extra guidance. They might say, hey, you can just can them, or just come off them as you wish. But they might say, oh, do you know what, actually that one, you need to be a bit more careful. Let's create a strategy to come down off it and be mindful of X, Y, Z might occur. So you have to be responsible when you're coming off medications properly.
Yeah, always worth a conversation with your GP.
Correct. Or medical doctor in the US or abroad.
Cool.
I think, well, pause. Thanks for all the info on the live. Great live as usual. You've given me some positivity when I'm in a world of sciatic pain.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Really
That's what we're here for, guys. Like, I wish I could take the pain away like that,
I know.
but we can't, you know. But what we can do is discover some really interesting things, like we have in Paul's case, for example. And that can really, you know, start us helping, at least understanding what's going on.
Explain.
Jackson said, can you
explain why every time I flare up, I struggle a lot. I struggle to bend to the right compared to bending to the left.
I'll give you one or two things. Number one, when you bend to the right, you are straining the very tissues that are torn and irritated, but more likely is the case, you have a disc bulge on one side, minor or major, and when you bend to that side, you close the hole. And when it's a flare-up, by definition, there's excess inflammation. Those of you guys, I forget how bad my eye was when I did one of the most recent live streams, but my eye was massive, right? It was the side of my face was swollen up.
That
right?
video that you posted on the Facebook.
Yeah, the video, yeah, the video.
That
Okay,
was quite,
you guys will have seen, right? How much swelling was on my face. This is a tiny hole. It's got nerves, blood vessels, other stuff going through there. Even with a relatively small amount of inflammation, when you make this hole occupied with extra inflammation and you then try and squeeze the hole, stuff's going to get squeezed. Most of you are dealing with the consequences of the inflammation that's in and around that lower back, the congestion that's in and around that lower back. When we have congestion, like for example in my knee, it restricted my ability of my knee to bend, but it wasn't really that much of an issue. It was a bit sore, a bit stiff. I could feel the pressure in the area, but there's no nerves being pinched because there's stretchy skin on this side here, or there's stretchy skin here. When you guys have injuries to the lower back, you don't have stretchy skin. It's a bony tube. And so if you flare yourself up, that tube is full of more fluid. Stuff's going to be unhappy about that. And when you make the hole even smaller by certain movements of the spine, you create even more irritation.
Okay, super.
Paula
Jackson,
said, now you know how my gym injury history, does this change how I
tackle the program?
No. It just helps you understand why you're having more difficulty. It doesn't change. You've got to be mindful, for example, of the propensity for you to get happy again when you start doing squats and pushing on faster with your lower body, the same as other gym goers have, right? Because so often the gym goer, we had one of the girls posted in the group the other day. She said, I got back working out with the PT, and have a look at this post. It was in the Facebook group, Paul. It was a while ago. There's been so many comments in there, you might have to scroll for a little while. And like she got given an epic leg day. I'm talking like what looked to be like a 90-minute leg day session, right?
Really appreciate it.
And like, yeah, okay, you're feeling good, but that's too much. That's too much. And that's the temptation that you're going to have, right? Your legs are going to be happy you're working out. Again, your symptoms start to subside. You're happy. It's not hurting, but it's not healed. And at the moment, the pain is what's stopping you doing a bunch of different things. So, awesome.
No,
anything else I need to cover?
Jackson, that's awesome. He said, I'll definitely be joining the
Well, let everyone have their Wednesday afternoon back now.
Did you want to mention about Black Friday just because you had a couple of comments? Or
yeah, guys, I mean, like, we do the Black Friday sale once a year. Oh, there we go. You made your appearance. Chris, I don't know if Chris is still here. Guys, we'll wrap it up here, but we do the Black Friday. We only do one sale a year. And that, so if you haven't made that sale, unfortunately, the best thing to do is what we recommend if you want to get involved in the program and you haven't had the chance to. We've still got a discount on the annual membership. There's always a discount on the annual membership. But what we typically recommend you guys to do, if you're thinking of joining the program, join on the flexible billing, the 28-day billing cycle. Get involved in the program, get started, and if you like it, just send us an email, super easy. Hey guys, can I switch over to the annual billing? And we'll make the switch and you'll save some money. 25% on the annual billing. And we do now have options for biannual billing for new members as well. So that gets a slightly lesser saving, but just reach out to us and we can make a switch for you guys that are signing up from December the 1st onwards. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. I'm just going to end it over here on TikTok. I hope that's been helpful. Remember, we are still there to help you guys in the Facebook group and in the members area. And one final note just before you guys do go, make sure when you are posting on the members area, you are posting in the group and not on your personal wall. Because if you're posting on your personal profile page, that is the equivalent of sending yourself a text message. We don't see it, nobody sees it, just you. So please make sure that you are posting in the members area, and you can either post in the main members area, or if it's a phase 1, 2, 3, or 4 specific comment or question, you can post it in there specifically. If it is an exercise review, you can also tag the topic and we will see those things and be able to reply and support you guys. So thanks to everybody that joined, and we will see you guys next time on the live. Bye guys.